this is Mrs. Gerber coming to you with another version of the Gerber Loves Books vlog. I'm coming to you from my kitchen because it is kind of rainy today. Wish I could be outside, trust me. I know I haven't made one of these in a while, but it has taken me a while to finish reading something. The book that I read, though, was incredible. It was so good. I've been wanting to read this book for a couple of years now. Finally was able to pick it up for the library, and I am so impressed with how awesome this book is. So the book that I just finished while I was on vacation was called Wolf Hollow by Lauren Wolk. I love the very first line of this book, so I'm going to share it with you. It says, "The year I turned 12, I learned how to lie." What an incredible opening. Like, as soon as you read that first line, you're like, what did she lie about? How did she learn how to lie? Because lying is something that we all struggle with. It's something we all have experience with. But this story is a beautiful way to talk about why lying is sometimes, just don't tell anybody I said this, but sometimes, very, very few times, it's actually kind of a good thing. So this story is about Annabelle. She lives in a very, very small town of Wolf's Hollow, Pennsylvania, and everything in her life is kind of perfect. Her family owns kind of a very nice, big farm. They are kind of well-to-do for the times. It takes place right around the time of the Great Depression, the recovery of the Great Depression. If you don't know anything about that era, a lot of families during that time lost a lot of money in a stock market crash, and there was a lot of poverty going around back then, and it didn't miss towns. In fact, it hit some towns harder than others. But in Wolf's Hollow, Annabelle's family was not necessarily as affected as other families. Now, the thing I love most about this book, Wolf Hollow, is that the characters the author develops in the story are very well put together. So Annabelle has turned 12. She goes to school in a one-room schoolhouse, so she's got everybody from 17-year-olds all the way down to 5-year-olds going to school with her. Very small school. There's probably less than 15 kids in her classroom, but one class in particular is a brand new student that affects everything that Annabelle has ever known. Her name is Betty Try that again. Her name is Betty Glengarry. And Betty is your absolute epitome of a bully. If you were to look up bully in the dictionary, I'm pretty sure that you would see Betty's picture in the dictionary right next to the word bully, because she is mean, she is terrible, she refuses to make friends. In fact, Annabelle tries to be her friend. She tries to be kind to her like she always has to everyone in her entire life. But Betty refuses and makes it near impossible for anyone to like her. And so Betty comes in as a new student to the school and kind of really throws Annabelle's life up into an uproar. One of the first interactions she has with Betty, she tries to be her friend, Betty refuses, and then after that it's kind of downhill from there on what happens to her. So some instances of Betty being a bully include threatening to hurt Annabelle's two younger brothers. She hits Annabelle very hard with a very large stick while walking through the woods one day. She sets up a trap to trip the brothers and ends up, instead of tripping them, she ends up slicing one of their necks because she set the trap too high. Very sharp wire that she had found. So Betty is not a nice girl. She is not a very nice girl at all. She doesn't want anybody to be her friend. She does a lot of things to push people away. She has had she's had a very rough life. She's actually only in Wolf's Hollow because she's being raised now by her grandparents because of circumstances that happened to her. But still, that's not an excuse for her to act so poorly to so many people. But it is She does make one friend. Betty makes one friend, a boy named Andy, who is borderline bully too. He makes a lot of poor choices, just like Betty does. But they end up kind of liking each other, liking each other. And when they get together, they cause a lot of hijinks, especially for Annabelle's family. The other character that you guys need to know about this is there's a character named Toby. He is a World War I veteran. He's come home, he comes to Wolf's Hollow as kind of a vagabond. He's a wanderer. He doesn't have a house of his own. He's actually just kind of homeless, and he's living in this old, trying to think of how to describe it. It's kind of like an old servant's quarters at one of the old abandoned mansions in town. And he lives in this rundown old servant's quarters that also used to have a kitchen. So it's got, it's pretty rough circumstances that he's living in. But he's always been very kind. In fact, Annabelle takes a liking to Toby and becomes his friend very quickly. Now, one day, I tell you about Toby because he plays a humongous part in the story. One day, Annabelle and her friend are talking to a neighbor, and something happens to Annabelle's friend that is pretty ghastly. A rock is thrown by who we later find out it was thrown by Betty. And this rock gets thrown and it hits Annabelle's friend in the eye, and it completely destroys her eye. Like, she ends up losing her eye. That's how bad it is. And so Annabelle, of course, is very distraught. She automatically thinks it's Betty, but Betty denies being the one who throws it. In fact, she ends up blaming Toby for this really bad, what Betty calls an accident, but we know that it was on purpose. She was purposely trying to hurt the person that Annabelle and her friend were talking to. And so Betty denies being the culprit, and then one day she disappears. And of course, that throws the whole town into a big tizzy. Everybody is out looking for her, trying to figure out what's happened to her. They thought she may have run away. But it turns out that she has fallen down a well. And of course, because Betty is such a not nice person, she accuses Toby of throwing her down the well, but that's not the truth, and obviously. So this story is all based around how one event can kind of snowball and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and a bigger mess can be made from one certain event happening. And it's a touching story of how her whole world gets turned around when Betty comes into Annabelle's life. It is heart-wrenching. The ending is makes you want to cry. Things happen to Annabelle. They happen to Toby. They even happen to Betty. And it just really, the events throughout the story keep you wanting to read to find out what Annabelle lied about, first of all, but also why Annabelle lied to begin with. So you guys should read this book. It is a touching story. It's called Wolf Hollow. And it is a really amazing story of Annabelle and her transition into getting bigger and what happens when you start growing up. So I hope you guys pick this up. I am currently about to begin another book, which I have left, I believe, in my car. I'm excited about reading this next one. I can't wait to share it with you. So hopefully it will not take me nearly as long to make another video as it did this one. I hope you guys have enjoyed this version of Gerber Loves Books vlog. I hope you read Wolf Hollow, because it's an excellent story, and I hope to see you around for another edition of Gerber Loves Books vlog. Don't forget to keep reading. Bye, world.